Good evening and welcome to Pressing Issues. Today is Sunday, June 21st, 2020. I'm your host, Jason Divendahl, here to talk tonight about a whole slew of Disney information that's come out in the past couple of days regarding the Park Pass reservation system and hotels opening and things along those lines. And I've spent the last 5 days at Universal Studios, so we can talk a little bit about what Universal's doing from first-hand point of view. I'd like to welcome my panelists tonight. We have Rich Grafton.
Hello, everyone.
We have Rob Whiteside.
What's up, guys?
And we have the normally disembodied Kevin Lake.
Woo!
Hello, hello.
Welcome, Kevin.
First timer. What's this show about?
First timer. Sort of. Not really.
It's about 2 hours long. That's what it is.
Oh, goodness. I'll see what I can do.
But Kevin being one of our Walt Disney World reporters, has been covering a lot of the happenings in and around Disney Springs the past week, so he may talk a little bit about that. But let's get down to the big news of the week: the Park Pass reservation system. We now know that starting at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, the Park Pass system will be operational, or at least is intended to be operational. Some of us who've dealt with this kind of thing before don't hold a lot of hope that it will be fully operational for everyone who wants to get on the system and book a park reservation, because Disney's IT is historically not able to cope with demand for this sort of thing. So we'll see. 7 a.m. tomorrow morning should be fun. What Disney has told us is that tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. the Park Pass system will open up for people with a resort reservation. And that's only people with a resort reservation will be able to book a park for any given date during their stay. And so those of us like me who've got a resort reservation for that first week after Walt Disney World opens are going to be on there tomorrow bright and early at 7 a.m. To try to make sure that, when we're here for a whole week, we can actually get into a park. Maybe a couple of those days that we're here, hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed. And then on the 26th, 4 days later, the 26th, the Park Pass system will open to annual pass holders. So anyone who's an annual pass holder who doesn't have a resort reservation will be able to book park reservations for specific dates. But in this case, we know, and Disney has said, that pass holders are going to be limited to 3 days worth of reservations in an effort to essentially make sure that anyone who wants to get into a park has the ability. They're going to restrict pass holders from making too many reservations for the Park Pass system. And then 2 days after that, anyone else who holds a ticket but is not an annual pass holder will be able to book a park reservation. And because Disney stopped selling tickets a while ago, this ends up being somewhat of a hit or miss. If you happen to have a ticket and it has to be linked to your My Disney Experience account, then you'll be able to book a park reservation. If you don't already have a ticket, you're kind of out of luck because Disney hasn't started selling tickets yet, and you need to have a ticket to book a park reservation. So that's the big news of the week, is this system. It's all integrated into My Disney Experience. That's right, the app that loses your fast passes and doesn't work when you need it to work is now going to control your admission to the parks. And what do we think about that, panel?
You don't sound very confident over there about any of this, Jason. One of the things
I've only gone through this sort of thing, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 times before trying to register for D23 events or other PIN events or whatever.
One of the things I thought was funny.
I've never had a good experience.
You said you were talking about the system being fully operational, and it just kind of made me think about Star Wars and the battle station being fully operational for some reason, and this Dark Empire-like feeling came across me. No, I agree. I mean, this is the thing that I am most afraid about, is not being able to get in. And I don't know, I'm not really sure like what this is going to be yet, because I get the feeling, because of the fandom that we're in and the close quarters that we are with each other, and we all know we want to be there. I wonder if everyone else wants to be there as much as we do, because I'm still hearing from people on Instagram that they're not ready to go back to the parks. They want to wait and see. They don't want a muted experience. They don't want to go back until there's a vaccine. There's a lot of things that I think that not everyone wants to be there yet. So Disney has really stacked the deck here. Universal opened the gates and said, yeah, come on in. We're open. Let's have it. And they haven't had to turn anybody away, to my knowledge, versus, canceling park hopping and saying you have to have a reservation and limiting pass holders to only holding 3 at once. And it's just one of these things where I'm looking at it going, obviously Disney wants to play this as safely as possible, but it seems like they're probably, and I hope this is the case, like overcompensating for this. And hopefully that when this reservation system goes online, I can't imagine there won't be a horrible, horrible catastrophe tomorrow morning. I can't imagine that's the case. I imagine waking up to our internal Slack and people just yelling and screaming and using 4-letter words about trying to get in, and I'm so anxious and nervous about that completely. But at the same time, I wonder, once the dust settles, how many people are really trying to get there, because not all hotels are open. They've cut people off from just deciding to go. You can't make new reservations if you didn't already have a reservation. So I feel like a lot of this is we're going to find out it's going to be a big tell tomorrow when we see how the system works, how to log in. The only other thing that's a question mark for me about the system is the time thing, because the leaked screenshots we saw said that you would get a time like 9 o'clock Magic Kingdom, 11 o'clock Magic Kingdom, and then to know how they're going to enforce that. I assume that's to stagger it so that like not everybody shows up at rope drop, but at the same time, how are they going to police that? I mean, it's just going to be wait and see, which is so disturbing, especially for people who know Disney as much as like all of us do, and all the people watching this show right now are, consider ourselves to be Disney experts, and they've just changed the entire game to the point where I'm assuming somebody somewhere at Disney right now is freaking out about what tomorrow, I hope so, about what tomorrow is going to bring and how it's going to be.
I mean, the times on the screenshots that we saw, that is a big concern, because most people who are sort of ardent Disney park goers generally know to get their rope drop so that they can get on the most attractions with the least amount of wait. Yeah. That's been a park strategy since before, park guidebooks existed. I can remember early 80s, we would get there at park opening and you run to your favorite attraction and you get on. So before the advent of FastPass, before the advent of guidebooks, it was just common sense to get there at park opening and get on some rides before the crowds move in. So if getting a park reservation is one thing, but if you get a park reservation that says you can't get there till noon, that really throws a monkey wrench in your plans for the day. And so the question is not only how is the system going to work tomorrow, but what is the deal with the times? And if I get a noon park entry, I'm really losing essentially almost a third of my day, right?
On a shortened day already.
The park hours are severely curtailed. So if I can't get in until noon and the park closes at 6, that's losing a big chunk of park time. So I think that's going to be a problem. I think I'm wondering, and this is my guess, is that those screenshots were just sort of samples, and um, because Disney hasn't said anything about a time slot, they just said a park reservation for a given day. I don't know that the time slots are going to happen. I hope they're not. I think if they do, it's going to be a huge amount of complaints, especially because no one is prepared for that because they haven't said anything about it. Um, but that's a big issue, especially if you're paying for a hotel package or park tickets or whatever, and you're not just a pass holder. Um, to not get in for the first 3 hours of a park opening is it's kind of dumb for that to be a restriction. And so I understand that, Disney can't let the entire capacity of the park in at park opening. But that's kind of been the way a lot of people go about things. And then there's a lot of people that don't. I mean, you look at the crowds that come at park opening, and those crowds, people keep coming all morning, depending on their personal preferences and how tired they are, and if they were up doing a, YouTube show late the night before or whatever. Not everybody's going to get there at park opening, so it's just kind of like you do what you want, and things sort of spread themselves out. And this is. My experience at Universal for the past 5 days has been it doesn't matter. There's been days that I've gotten to Universal when they do the early entry at 8 o'clock, and I've gotten there at 7:45. And there's been days that the park opens at 9, and I've gotten there at 10. And it doesn't matter. There's not any significant crush of people at 7 a.m. 8 a.m. when the early hours open versus 9 a.m. versus 10 a.m. There are few enough people that it just doesn't matter. And I think with the 30% park capacity that we've seen, that number bandied about, I think it's really, I don't think it's going to matter. I just don't think there's enough people going to show up at any given time to make that an issue. That Disney has to worry about putting a time on your park pass.
Yeah, that does seem like the case because, again, Universal seems like they've had no problems at all. I know SeaWorld is still doing a reservation system, to my knowledge, making sure you have a reservation, but I think it's just a formality. But if it was like, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and they were trying to plan ahead of time like they did, and didn't need the system at first because they needed it day one, but after that they kind of weaned off of it. I'm hoping that is what happens with the reservation system. And Universal parks are smaller capacity. I think that if you're looking at both those parks together, you still aren't seeing the same capacity options that you would have in just the Magic Kingdom alone. So since those haven't maxed out at whatever number that they have in mind, it seems like that Disney's just playing this safe. And again, I think there will be trouble tomorrow morning with the reservation system when it logs on. A lot of confusion, a lot of technical issues, a lot of people, especially us, trying to get on there and get that first reservation. But I'm hoping they're just being overly optimistic about playing it safe. The other thing that I was going to say is that when we were talking about the time thing, and whether the time thing happens or not, it seems like it's a good idea because maybe you have a slow release into the park. But when they did Galaxy's Edge, you would get a band and you would get in for the same, 4 hours or whatever was the plan. So I don't see them kicking people out that got in at 9 to leave at 3. And then the other thing is they've cut off what else you can do because they're not letting you park hop. So it's not like you can get in there and spend your hours somewhere else. So hopefully the time thing isn't an issue, and hopefully the reservation thing isn't a long-term thing. It's just some way for them to be safe about what they're doing in the beginning.
Yeah, I think you mentioned about us not knowing how the system's going to work tomorrow morning. I just got a text from my sister, who's on my reservation for July 11th, hotel reservation at Old Key West, and she's like, because she's going to make the park reservations for us. She texts me and says, "What if they don't let me make a park reservation for you? Do we have a backup plan?" Because I mean, you kind of have to assume if you have a hotel reservation booked and there's 4 people on the reservation that one of you could make the park reservations for everybody listed on that hotel reservation. You'd kind of think so. It would kind of make sense, like especially if you're going with kids who aren't going to wake up at 7 a.m. tomorrow and want to make a park reservation for themselves. But the reality is, she's like, "Are we sure we can do this?" And I'm like, the reality is we're never sure, because Disney never releases enough information about any of these things. So the reality is, no, we're not sure, but we kind of think it's logical and we hope that's going to happen. And the backup plan is, if it doesn't work, she's going to text me right away and let me know, because that's the best we can do. But I'll be, 7 a.m. I'll be at the Polynesian trying to check in for my stay tomorrow. So it's, hopefully you can do it on mobile in the app. I don't know how any of this is going to work, honestly.
Well, you know what, Jason? It says on there, like in the steps of how this works, and I'm just looking on our website at it. It says, link your admission to your Disney account, create your party. And it says, when you begin to make a reservation, you'll be prompted to create your party from your friends and family list. So you would think, and again, you're right, we don't know anything until tomorrow morning, but you would think that means that one person could take the reservation for everybody. And just from a system standpoint, I would think they would want that. They wouldn't want everyone in the room to be logging in from someplace different, you from the Polynesian, your sister from wherever. That's just a bigger, that's like a bigger load on the system. It should be that they should want just one person to do it.
Sure, absolutely. But the whole creating your party thing brings up questions like, there's a ton of people in my friends and family on my Disney experience. Right. Is the system going to know which of those have a hotel reservation? Like Tom has a hotel reservation. He's not on my hotel. He's not staying in my room, but he's got a hotel reservation. So will the system, for example, let me make a park reservation for him because he's on my friends and family list and has a hotel reservation? It's just not the same hotel reservation as I have. Like,
that's
the system needs to be pretty significantly aware of some of these things, and I would be surprised if it is. I mean, the system can't even keep my phone number saved in there, because every time I try to make a reservation, I have to type my phone number in again. So how's it going to be able to tell if this random person on my friends and family list has a hotel reservation for the same date that I do, that I'm trying to book a park reservation for? I just, if this works like it's theoretically supposed to, I'm going to be really surprised.
Fair.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. So on the instructions on how to use this system, it does mention picking a date, picking a park, and picking a time. And I think that's been the only mention of it. But there's some, I guess, credence to that being a part of this, and understandably, because I don't think they want, whatever the capacity limit is. If it's 30,000 people for Magic Kingdom, I don't think they want 30,000 people showing up right at 9 a.m., which, especially on the 11th, we would all 100% do. But, to me, the overarching point is we just don't know. And I think that's the most frustrating thing, because in true Disney fashion, they gave us, the high level overview, but there's so many unique situations in any, given configuration for a trip for people, and how this may or may not work. And we just don't know. And we have to find out the hard way. And, I know tomorrow's not going to go well, at least for some people, even if the system, by some miracle stays online and functional, there's going to be other issues related to tickets and resorts and who's in your party and who's not. Like, there's going to be issues with that. And my one hope is that with them staggering this by a couple days for each different group, that they have the resources that if you pick up the phone, you're not going to be on hold for 2 hours. You'll call, you'll wait 15 minutes, you'll get somebody, and they'll, fingers crossed, actually have some knowledge and information on how to handle that situation. So at some point in the next 2 days, you can get the reservations you need, because I don't think there's going to be the level of demand, or not to say demand, but just qualified guests to take all of these reservations immediately. So like, how many people have a resort reservation on the 11th? There's not that many, because there's not that many resorts. So I think tomorrow and Tuesday are going to be pretty smooth. There's a lot, but my assumption would be there'll be a lot of people accessing the system, but how many people have a reservation on the 11th and will be battling for park pass on the 11th? My thought is the demand tomorrow for any given park on any given individual date will not exceed the inventory. So if they can make situations right over the next couple days, when inevitably things go wrong tomorrow, then at least if you've met your end goal of getting your reservation for the park you wanted on the day you wanted, as far as this is all concerned, I think that would be a win, considering what we're all up against with this.
What is a little bit positive about that, though, Kevin, is that the announcement today about the new hotels that will be open on July 10th. So they're actually I assume they're feeling confident enough to add a few more rooms and a few more, I guess, like you said, eligible people to that plan, because they're adding, of all places, Pop Century on July 10th. So to me, that's a time that. Well, why is it open?
I mean, so here's the thing, and here's when Kevin said there's not that many people eligible to make reservations. I mean, there's, how many thousand? There's 30-some thousand hotel rooms across property. People, I'm sure there's people out there that have Pop Century reservations for July 10th that booked it, I don't know, 9-10 months ago, right? And they were supposed to confirm or cancel by June 12th. Remember that? Like 2 weeks ago, we talked about that. They were supposed to confirm or cancel that reservation. And what if they didn't? I think one of the questions that's going to have to be answered tomorrow is how many of these people that had pre-existing reservations that didn't confirm or cancel them by June 12th are going to hop on the system tomorrow to try to make a park reservation. You kind of got to figure there's not going to be a lot of them, because those people, if they haven't paid attention this far and not confirmed or canceled their hotel reservation, they're certainly not paying attention to this park pass reservation system. But, it's kind of up in the air how many hotel rooms are booked for July, or for July 10th and onward, that Disney just doesn't know if those people are still coming yet, even though they've asked them to confirm or cancel it.
Yeah, and I just don't think it can be a huge number because of people who have voluntarily canceled, because of people who want to stay there but can't because of travel restrictions. July and August are huge for international, and those folks from the UK, and Brazil's usually later in the summer, but they can't get here. So I have to think with what would have been booked back in March or April, has probably dwindled down a pretty good amount. Obviously we don't have the data and we wish we did, but Disney has it, and you just pray that they're using it wisely. But I think the idea with opening things like Pop on the 10th, I don't think it's so much for people with Pop reservations. I think it's to have places to put people who had reservations at hotels that aren't open, because you can't just upgrade everybody to a Magic Kingdom resort or something like that. Like, you need to have lower end stuff to shift people over to when the hotel they actually booked isn't open.
Yeah. Hey, one other thing though that strikes me. Go ahead, Jason.
My only question is, why'd they wait so long to make that decision, right? Like, they've known forever that, All Stars aren't opening on the 10th, but they just waited till today to come out and say, hey, we're going to, open Pop on the 10th. they're really pushing things like as far as they possibly can with these sort of announcements.
I would like to
like the
give them the
announcement today about which
benefit.
hotels are open.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt that they have some sort of analytics somewhere that they've crunched the numbers and said, look, based on how many people have gone back and said, yes, we still want our reservation. These are how many rooms that we can open up. These are how many reservations we think we're going to have. And again, that's me with the pixie dust being very optimistic about that. But one of the things I was going to say before was that as confused as we are about this and as ingrained in the culture as we are, I can't imagine if you were just like, if you were not like, if you're a casual Disney person, how would you take any of this in? I mean, the system was already confusing as it was about how far out could you do a dining plan and how far out can you do a fast pass? And I can only get 3 fast passes, but they have to be for the same park, but I paid for a park hopper, but I can't. I mean, there's so many things about this system that we kind of take for granted because we've like lived it, that this new system we're already having all these questions about it. I can't imagine if you were again, a casual Disney goer, and maybe the point is a casual Disney goer wouldn't be going right now. And that's probably for the best. I mean, you would get, again, a muted experience, but it's already so confusing. And I've got just such anxiety about it myself. And I feel like I'm still trying to absorb all the content and all of the information that they've given us. And it's still not enough because I still have so many questions.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and the other thing, so
I was just going to say real quick, like I'll tell you one thing that I found out just by digging as somebody who's heavily invested in all this is the park pass system. It doesn't work on the app. It's not being built into the app. So if you go on there, and here's a pro tip for all our viewers, if you go on the My Disney Experience app tomorrow morning, there's not going to be anything there for park pass. You need to go in a browser, and that's information that came from Disney, but only to like travel agents during a webinar or something, not something they've clearly told everybody, but just something that's going to happen tomorrow. People are going to go on the app, and guess what? Park pass isn't there. You need to go, on an actual web browser. Yeah. Just little things like that people need to know, but like most aren't going to know.
Disney says My Disney Experience, and people think of the app. That's the first thing that comes to mind. So the fact that you can't do it on the app is going to really throw people for a loop. Here's another question that I don't know that we have an answer to. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but what's the time frame for these park reservations? So like if you have a hotel reservation for August, can you make park reservations tomorrow? If you have a hotel reservation for December, can you make park reservations tomorrow? Like how far in advance can you make park reservations for your hotel?
Yeah, I think you can, because my sister-in-law booked for Thanksgiving, and part of the reason she went in and got annual passes before they were cut off, and they are DVC. So she went in and got everything set up and is planning to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow with a cup of coffee, hitting refresh, trying to get reservations for her November trip. So if that's not the case, that would be surprising to me. I think it's just they're finally opening them. I don't think it's for a short term. I think it's for anyone who has reservations already had reservations moving forward can go and start doing it starting tomorrow. That's unless somebody knows something else that I don't. That's my understanding.
And right. So that's my understanding too. And what that means to me is that, there may be only 30,000 people allowed in the Magic Kingdom on July 11th, but you're going to have 30,000 times 6 months worth of people trying to make a park reservation tomorrow at 7 a.m. because they haven't staggered this for any time frame. Like if they would have said, people with resort reservations can make a park reservation 60 days ahead, and annual pass holders can do it 40 days ahead. And, that is kind of, I think, what they should have done, but it's open for the next 6 months. Anybody with a hotel reservation can make a park reservation. And that's a lot of people. It's not just the people that are trying to go the first week the parks are open. It's the people that are trying to go in, like you said, in November.
Well, now I have bigger anxiety.
Thanks a lot. That are going to try to get on this system tomorrow than just 1 day's worth.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's where there's another thing, like a rumor that it's only 60 days worth, but that's coming from one travel agent, but then others say it's anybody through September of 2021. So again, just more unclear information, and we don't really know. Sorry, Rich.
That's okay. I was just going to make an analogy. I wonder if this will be more like a long time ago, you didn't have fast passes, and even before that, we had ticket books. I don't know if anyone remembers, but there was a huge cognitive dissonance when we went away from the books and to pay one price and get on the rides. And then there was another incredible switch when Fast Pass came out. And my recollection is back in because I was tangentially involved in some of the stuff going on, the way that whole thing was designed was assuming that we would have to tweak and adjust forever. And of course, and I would say FastPass is still being tweaked and adjusted. And I wonder if that's how things are going to go this time. If they're clever, giving them the benefit of giving the IT structure, the IT architects within Disney, the benefit of the doubt, then they don't yet know how this is going to shake out. But they know 5 of the 90% probability cases that will occur, and they will have written back-end stuff on the website, which may be why it's not in the app, to handle 2 of those, 3 of those at a time, and then eventually sift out, and we'll get down to 1. The non-optimistic, some might say cynical point of view is it's the same people who wrote what's going to be happening tomorrow are the ones who wrote Shop Disney for the premier collectibles experience on Shop Disney, which, as we all know, has been exciting to say the least. So somehow we're hopefully closer to the good people rather than the bad programmers have been working on this, and we'll find out with them tomorrow which way this is all going to go. Like Jason said, it's not just... Well, so there's 2 things. It's not just the people who are going to be there tomorrow and the next week and the next month. It's the people who are going to want to try to start reserving things. Even if it is 60 days, that's 30,000 people who have various vacation durations for the next 2 months. If it's more than 60 days, maybe it is the rest of the year. That is hundreds of thousands of people hitting the service at the same time. And I also agree, I think, Jason, you said the muted attendance, I think, is definitely true. Up here in northern United States, we're not quite ready to use a rental car that 10 people have used, sit in an airplane seat that several people have sat in, go through an airport, sleep in a bed, and so forth yet. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. So I'm thinking that that's going to cut down on the number and variety of people who would otherwise try to be getting to Walt Disney World, who now won't be part of that collection. They won't be part of that group that's there. And in the end, that will help, because that will help Disney maintain some level of control over the number of people and the quantity of work that their systems have to do in order to take care of the people that are, let's say, locals, let's say the next 60-day people who are going to travel and fulfill their reservations. So I don't know that we can say that Disney knows everything that's going to happen. We can hope that they have accounted for those things that might happen, and we'll see tomorrow how close they were to those targets.
Yeah, Rich, I was the one that said muted. I know that we both have beards, and you probably get us confused a lot. So, I mean,
definitely,
mistake.
Yes.
Beards and glasses. I totally get that. That makes a lot of sense. One other thing I just would like, to piggyback on that again, though, is that it's not just the people who are like waiting for the full experience, but, kind of like you said, it's like the people who aren't ready to take those next steps, and the people who don't want to wear masks or are afraid of what the mask in the Florida heat will be, or afraid that, I think you need to be a little bit concerned at this point until the system opens up. Am I going to get a reservation? Because like Jason said at the top, if you get down there and you have a room, and it's always been assumed if you have a room, you're going to get in, and that's no longer a promise. So.
Right. Is it going to be worth the effort? That's the main thing. I mean, From an epidemiological point of view, there's certain percentages of probabilities that things will happen and things that won't happen. And you try to drive your life through, the center of that so that you don't die. But the other part of it is there's a lot of effort in figuring all that out. And certainly those people who are not Disney geeks probably will not want to figure that out. But those of us who are Disney geeks, I think if I were a Florida resident, I probably would have been to Disney Springs at least a few times, just to see what it was like. But since I have to travel and make a whole bunch of arrangements and have a serial encounter with the unknown, as far as the virus is concerned, many people aren't ready to do that.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, Rich. And we can maybe switch topics a bit, and I'll just talk about my experience this week. So Jill and I arrived here on Tuesday. We're Northerners coming to Florida for the first time since the pandemic hit. We've been going to Universal Studios pretty much every day for this week. We've gone to Disney Springs in the evening a number of days. Yesterday it was 96 degrees or something, and we had to wear a mask all day. And, so yeah, a lot of those things are things people worry about. I had no idea what it was going to be like, certainly, but here's sort of my experience in a nutshell is that Universal's not crowded at all. They don't obviously need to have park reservations because there's just not that many people there. Wearing a mask in 100-degree heat with high humidity is not comfortable. Yesterday was probably the worst day of the entire week that we've been here, with the temperature and the humidity both being very high. And there were points in time where I'm like, I just need to sit down and get some cold drink and take my mask off because I just need to take a deep breath, and I haven't been able to do it. When your mask is getting moist with humidity and sweat, it's uncomfortable and it's hard to breathe. Different mask materials, I think, work better in some situations than others. But everybody, for the most part, I would say 99.9% of the people that I've seen at a Universal park have had the mask on, haven't had to get yelled at or anything. Tom had one instance today where there was a family that didn't put their mask on, and they weren't an English-speaking family, so there was a communications barrier with the team members, and it was kind of a mess. But that's in 5 days now of going to Universal. Well, 6 days actually. That's been the only experience that I've had with people that sort of refuse to wear a mask. So the experience at Universal has been great. I mean, we went to both parks. I went to Volcano Bay a couple times. Volcano Bay is obviously a different situation because it's a water park. You have to wear your mask going in. You have to wear your mask going to the restaurants. You have to wear your mask going to the restroom. But if you're in the water or on a beach chair at the water's edge, you don't have to wear the mask. And people have been pretty good at following those rules. Really, I wasn't super concerned at Volcano Bay either. I mean, they have social distancing markers set up in all the queues. People were respecting those quite well. I will tell you the biggest, the scariest instance, I will say. So coming from Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania has had a mask requirement since the beginning where everyone has to wear a mask when they go out. That hasn't been the case in Florida, as many of you probably know. Orange County just put that rule in place starting yesterday. that people have to wear a mask when they go out in public. The rest of Florida still doesn't have that regulation in place. But I went to the grocery store on Thursday, and out of 6 days at Universal and Volcano Bay and Disney Springs in the evening, the scariest situation was at the grocery store, because fully 3/4 of the people were not wearing a mask at the grocery store because it wasn't required. So in terms of feeling comfortable around people and people following the regulations with wearing a mask, that was all fine until I went to Publix, and that was the biggest instance of people not wearing a mask that I've come across in the entire time I've been here. So, I think the parks probably may very well be a safer place than the grocery stores here in Florida. Obviously, the coronavirus cases have been going up in Florida. It's been in the news. It's a huge deal. I think the mask requirements now in Orange County may help that. We'll see. It might take a little while for the data to fully come in or whatever, but I felt much more comfortable at a theme park than I did at the grocery store, and I think that says something for how the parks are handling the pandemic and handling the mask requirements and handling the social distancing and things like that.
That is a very scary place to be, is at the grocery store, because they can't really kick you out. I mean, they could, but at least at Universal, and hopefully I assume at Disney, they're going to be very strict about it. I've seen some videos online of people who are recording things and getting, cast members and team members reminding them to wear their masks. So, and I also hope, and I think I've said this from the beginning, that the people who want so badly, like myself, like you, to go to the parks are going to follow the rules, because we want to be there. I mean, we're missing these parks, and we're missing this magic and these experiences for the past 4 months, and we're ready to go back. And I said on an episode a few weeks ago that I'm ready to wear a dress, carry a bag, a purse, whatever I need to do. I mean, I'm ready to go and do whatever it takes to get back in the park. So I feel like it's such a little ask to wear it. I mean, I know it's going to be uncomfortable. I get that. But also sometimes wearing pants are uncomfortable, but they're certainly not going to let me walk around without wearing pants. So it seems like that's just one of the things we're going to do. And it's basic human decency to say, look, where do my rights end and yours begin? That's, we need to take care of each other in here. And I'm hoping that we see even more of that in Disney than we're seeing at Universal. And Universal, like you said, Jason, seems like they're playing by the rules too. So fingers crossed people just get that and watch their distance. And I know that we've all, I've seen some things from some of the people on our staff that have run into issues like the one that Tom was talking about with social distancing as well. Respecting the 6 feet distance. So it's gonna happen.
I mean, that happened to me probably 2 to 3 times over the course of 6 days, where essentially the group behind us was not stopping at their marker where they were supposed to. That happening 3 times over 6 days, I think that's pretty good percentage of people following the rules, and sometimes the people just need to be told or reminded to look down or whatever. The other thing that I noticed at Universal quite a bit was that people were getting yelled at, the people that pull their mask down so it doesn't cover their nose. Those people were getting yelled at that the mask has to cover your nose and your mouth. So there were a number of times where I saw Universal team members, telling people walking around that the mask has to cover their nose. And whether they didn't know that, or whether they thought it was acceptable to not cover your nose, or whether they were just doing it on purpose to try to make it easier to breathe, I was glad to see that they were being told the extent of the rule and how to properly wear the mask. So I think Universal is absolutely doing as much as they can to play by the rules. I mean, every attraction you go on, right before you board the ride vehicle, there's a team member there giving out a squirt of hand sanitizer for every person boarding every ride vehicle. So, I think they're doing everything in their power that they can to make it as safe as possible. And like I said, I think it's safer than Publix. So.
And what's ironic to me is that I know that there wasn't a pandemic the last time that I went to Disney, but there are so many things that that I'll be doing that I wasn't doing before. Washing my hands multiple times, using hand sanitizer everywhere, probably not holding onto those railings as I'm walking through the lines, safely distancing myself from other people, wearing a mask, and they're going to be cleaning more than they were before. So again, I know there wasn't a pandemic before, but at this point, I feel like theoretically we should all be safer than we were before when we were at Disney, because I don't think we were mindful of all of those things.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you think about it, like we're walking on the moving walkways at Universal between the parking garage and the parks. The moving walkways, they have people, and Disney has this at escalators to the garage too. There are people with a towel with sanitizer on it, just holding it against the moving handrail of the escalators and the moving walkways, so that as it rotates by, it just gets completely cleaned. Now they're only doing it on one side out of two. Maybe they switch back and forth, every couple of minutes. I don't know. I didn't stand there long enough to watch, but any of those things are certainly way more than they've done in the past. And so, there wasn't a pandemic, but there certainly was all kinds of colds and viruses and things going around. So, other than the coronavirus, the chance that you'll catch any other disease should be greatly reduced from what it would be in a typical park trip because of all these enhanced cleaning procedures. And so then that made me think, well, maybe they should be cleaning this well all the time, regardless of whether there's a pandemic, because clearly it's better to be clean than dirty, no matter what virus is floating around. It's better to have these things cleaned. And then I thought, they've got people standing there with a towel against the handrail of an escalator. Couldn't there just be some device that does that clips onto the edge of the escalator and just cleans the handrail as it goes around repeatedly? Like, these are the cleanest these escalator handrails have ever been after the day they were installed. It shouldn't be difficult to make a device that does that without the need for a human to stand there and do it. And so, in terms of things that may end up happening over the course of, as we come out of this pandemic situation, there may very well be new standards in cleanliness for certain things, just because it's a better practice. It's better to be clean than dirty. So even after, social distancing guidelines are unnecessary and there's a vaccine and everything else, does it make sense for public places to be less clean? It may not be as dangerous, but there's plenty of different colds and viruses and things out there that are going to cause sickness that could be cleaned and probably should be cleaned for the health of the general public.
Yep. Hey, can I throw something random at you, because I was crunching some numbers, and I know everybody loves a good math game. Everybody loves a good math game.
Absolutely, they do.
The original 11, I think it's 11, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 DVC resorts that were supposed to be open. I just did an internet search of each of the room capacity, 4,661 rooms out of the first 11. That's not including Pop. and that's not including Kidani Village, but the first 11. I mean, not Kidani, Jumbo House, but 4,661. I gotta imagine that even at 30%, Magic Kingdom is going to be 20,000 people. I feel like the odds are, to quote the Hunger Games, are ever in our favor that we should be able to get a room. If you have
they are, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, as long as the system doesn't buckle under the pressure.
Don't put that into the universe. Don't say that.
I don't think it's going to be a problem to get a reservation. Maybe for July 11th and July 15th, those days are going to be pretty popular. But for some random day in August, I don't think it's going to be hard to get a park reservation. It certainly is going to be easier to get a park reservation than it's going to be to actually get on the system tomorrow at 7 a.m. And so, but the problem is that nobody knows. And so everybody's going to get on at 7 a.m. tomorrow to try to do the same thing, even though they don't have to, because nobody knows and Disney hasn't told us any differently. So it's almost like they're setting up their system to fail because they haven't spaced this out or given, a window for people or whatever. It's going to be bad. I think there's no question that the system's going to become overloaded, and it doesn't have to be, because I don't think it's going to be that hard in the long run, especially looking at Universal. Universal doesn't need park reservations, and like you said, their capacity is much less than Disney, but they don't have any problem with people, and they haven't had to turn people away due to capacity at the parks. So yeah, all this is probably unnecessary, but that's not going to stop hundreds of thousands of people from hopping on the system at 7 a.m. tomorrow and trying to make a reservation for, the middle of October on a Wednesday to go to Animal Kingdom. That day is probably not going to fill with reservations for another month, but people are going to hop on at 7 to get it because they know how these things work and they don't want to risk it. So, yeah, I mean, I can't see the system functioning well tomorrow at 7 a.m. under any circumstances. What I can see is that park reservations are going to be available and remain available for most dates, for most parks in the future. I don't think they're all going to sell out at 7 a.m. tomorrow, but people are still going to hop on as soon as they can to get these because it just reduces the anxiety level once you have a park reservation.
Well, can I jump off something you said there and move us onto another topic just real quick? The one thing that confuses me is, especially with these openings, the 11th specifically and the 15th, if all these parks had opened on the same day, this would be a lot less of an issue in my mind. When Disney has the blessing of capacity between these four parks, and I get it, reopening a park isn't easy, but you've got previews and different things going on, and you're at reduced capacity for traffic and some of the other infrastructure loads. To me, it would have made so much more sense to open all four of these parks on the same day. Let people decide between Magic Kingdom or the first day of Food and Wine or hopping right on to Rise or settling for something at Animal Kingdom. But to me that would have made a ton more sense. And sorry, I forgot I'm not on here. That would have made a ton more sense just to spread the load around instead of essentially having two openings that are both kind of at half capacity as far as the whole resort is concerned. Bundle it all into one. Yeah, it might be a rougher day to manage just from a high level standpoint, but think about how many other problems it solves at the same time. So that's probably the way I would have gone. And kind of jumping off to what you were saying about, reservations shouldn't be hard to get in August. Wanted to move us over to the whole pass holder thing and the option to cancel or get the other month, and the implications of if reservations are hard to get, what kind of situation does that put Disney in, both from potentially a legal standpoint and customer service? Are they going to have to continue with, things to to try to resolve these situations, is a month enough? I don't know what the thoughts are out there, but that's what I thought of.
No, that's a good point. There's obviously contractual issues with these passes, and the contractual requirement for Disney to provide access to a pass holder, and whether a reservation being required fits in that contractual agreement or not. It looks like they're throwing an extra month on your pass, basically, to sort of mitigate that. Whether that's enough for people, I mean, if you need a park reservation through the end of 2020 or into 2021, as it seems like it's going to happen, or at least they're saying it is, if a pass holder can get a reservation but decide not to take it, does that mean Disney has fulfilled their end of the contract? I don't know. It's kind of a big mess in terms of that, and also what if pass holders are able to come but don't, then they cancel their pass, then they don't have to keep paying or whatever. That's all well and good, but it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be a ton of pass holders out there trying to get these park reservations, no matter what. And so, in reality, for the first 4 days, starting tomorrow, people with resort reservations have a jump on the pass holders in order to get a park reservation. The problem is, come June 26th, when it opens up to pass holders and there's no horizon in sight for these park reservations, all of a sudden having a resort reservation doesn't get you any preferential timing in terms of getting your park reservation, because it's just like wide open to everybody at that point. So, people with resort reservations, the next 4 days are critical. If you actually intend to come to Disney and want to go to the parks, the next 4 days are critical for you to get your park reservations in before the whole system is open to pass holders and then the general public 2 days after that.
It will be interesting to see how that pans out. We've been talking a lot, because we're annual pass holders, about the decision whether we should get a refund, whether we should stand pat and see what happens, which is what we ended up deciding. As it stands now, we'll have 121 days added to our passes plus the month, which I believe brings us our passes out to July of 2021, if I remember right. So there's an excellent chance that things will have returned to the new normal by that time. But for the next several months, totally agree. We will be in the scrum with everybody else where we decide to get a resort reservation and then a park reservation. And that's going to be very challenging, I think. It'll be a whole different way, like we said at the top of the show, a whole different way of going to Disney. All the little tricks and tips that we've learned and experienced and told our friends won't work anymore, and we'll have to figure out some new approaches and some new ways of doing things. And also, we talked about how Disney's back-end architects might have designed all this sort of thing. Maybe there is a department of Machiavellian machinations that actually has designed things to fail, to limit the number of people who attempt to make reservations and go into the park for the next month. I don't know if that's actually true, but I know in some instances with Fast Passes and Galaxy's Edge opening and Pandora opening, it sure seemed like that was the way it was designed. So maybe it'll be self-limiting, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, so say you bought your annual pass, let's see, I bought mine in January of this year. So my old one expired at the beginning of December, but I didn't come in December. And then I came in the middle of January. So that's when I bought my annual pass. So my annual pass should be good until May or June of 2021. But, if you're the kind of person that doesn't think you're going to come for the next 6 months, you'd be better off taking the refund and then just buying a new annual pass next year when you come. I wonder how many pass holders are in that situation where, they're saying, I'm not going to go. And then when you look at the money, the 4 months of extension isn't really enough to make the value in your favor if you're not going to come for the next 4 months either. It would be better off for you to just cancel your pass outright and then buy a new one starting whenever you decide to come, whether that's November, December, January, or February, or whatever. It certainly is the case that the 4 month extension might not make up for any value you'd get out of having the pass, because you're not going to use it for the next 6 months anyway. And on top of that, I can also see, come June 26th, and you're an annual pass holder, if you can't get the days that you want, if you can't get a park reservation on the days that you want to go, you might just give up and say forget it, and then decide to cancel your pass at that point. So I think there's a lot of sort of uncertainty in terms of the pass holders and their options to extend or cancel. You're getting extended by the number of days the parks were closed, and then you're getting a month on top of that to make up for whatever hassles occur. But is that month on top of that enough to make up for the hassles? And is it in your financial best interest to just cancel the pass, get a partial refund, and then buy a new pass in 6 months or whenever you decide to come back? For people that aren't Floridians, that may be the better way to go. Obviously it comes down to everybody's personal situation, but still, it really depends on when you bought the pass and how much use you got out of it, and what the new expiration date is going to be. If it would make more sense to just cancel it and start over in 6 months or whenever you decide to come back. So that's an interesting calculation that people are going to have to make, and it very well may come down to June 26th. If you can't get the dates you want, then why have the pass? Just cancel it and get your money back. I can certainly see that happening. Now, with all that being said, your pass is getting extended and you're getting a month on top of it. That all sounds great. Universal has a promotion going from when the parks opened at the beginning of June until the end of September, that if you buy or renew an annual pass in June, July, August, or September, they're giving you 15 months for the price of 12. So I just bought a pass this week on Tuesday, and my pass expiration date is September 21st of 2020. Which essentially would be the same expiration date as if I bought it, September of 2021 is my expiration date. That essentially be the same expiration date as if I bought the pass in January, and they tacked on the extra days. But that's a 3-month extension on top of whatever park days, so you're not getting you're not getting the days that the parks were closed because you didn't own the pass, but you're essentially getting those 3 months tacked onto your pass anyway if you buy now. So it's almost like you bought the pass in March and you're getting the 3 months that were closed added on plus 3 more months on top of that. And Disney's only giving you 1 month on top of that. So again, that makes a Universal annual pass look like a better value because you're getting 15 months for the price of 12. And so if Disney is not being agreeable to your desire to come because you need a reservation to get into the park, Universal's making it one heck of a compelling argument to go there instead with a 15-month annual pass. They're also giving out, and this is only for the next couple of weeks, If you buy a quick service entree, you get a free refillable soda cup. So normally you buy the refillable soda cup, it's like $17, and you can refill it for free all day at a Coke Freestyle machine. You're basically getting that for free when you buy like a $9 quick service entree. So pretty much every day this week that we've gone, we've gotten a free soda with a food purchase and had soda for the rest of the day we were in the park. So, I mean, there's some perks that Universal's throwing at you that are.
Yeah. Hopefully they wipe down the freestyle machines.
There are sanitizing wipes next to all the freestyle machines. So they're not doing it, but the wipes are there for you to do it.
Oh, how nice.
When you fill up your cup.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping. I made a spreadsheet because that's what I do. But the inputs are all very fuzzy, and one of them is the one you just mentioned. What is the probability that we'll actually be able to make use of the pass, i.e., do we want to go down, and will there be a reservation available? So those are still kind of TBD, which makes the model in the spreadsheet kind of useless at the moment. But on the other hand, the other intangible is that we get a magnet. So, there is that. But I'm kind of hoping that we haven't heard the last word on annual passes. I mean, there were a couple of years where we got an extra month when we renewed an annual pass, and there were a few other perks that extended the duration of the pass. And I'm kind of hoping, again, giving Disney all the benefit of the doubt as possible, that we haven't heard the last of the things that they're going to do with APs. But you're right, timing is key here, because then maybe again there's the Department of Machiavellian Machinations that's waiting for enough APs to cancel before they start adding perks to the remaining APs. Who knows?
Exactly.
But I'm kind of hoping that we haven't heard the end.
Yeah, no, I think it would certainly make sense that, if a huge number of pass holders are canceling and getting refunds, that is certainly going to prompt Disney to roll out more perks and more freebies for pass holders, more than just a magnet. I mean, Universal saying, well, every time you buy a meal, we'll give you a $17 refillable soda cup. And Disney's like, we're going to mail you a magnet. Like there's a vast difference there. And yeah, I think it'll take, a couple thousand people saying, I'm going to cancel my pass and get a refund for Disney to perk up and find some more freebies to throw in to keep these pass holders on board. We'll wait, it remains to be seen. But again, Universal's making a pretty compelling value proposition for their annual passes. The other one that they're doing too is that early entry to Volcano Bay had been restricted to only resort guests and the most expensive level of annual pass. Theirs is called Premier. So if you have a Premier pass, you can get into Volcano Bay a half an hour early. But if you have any of the lower level of passes, you cannot under normal circumstances. What Universal has done, although they haven't advertised it super well, is that they are letting all AP holders get into Volcano Bay for the early entry. Because, I mean, I went there for 2 days at opening, and there were maybe 100 people waiting to get in for the early entry. So it's clearly, they're clearly throwing out these perks that they can easily do because no one's coming, but it makes it sound like a great perk. And for those of us that are going, it's fantastic because, getting into Volcano Bay a half an hour early means you can do 3 or 4 of the slides with 0 wait, whereas it might be 45 to 60-minute waits later in the day. So that half hour early entry to Volcano Bay is actually a huge, huge advantage. And they're throwing that in for free to all their pass holders. So Again, they're going really all out to make sure that they're giving enough perks to their pass holders to make them stick around.
You know what, Jason, real quick, one of the other things that strikes me about the value of an annual pass, and don't you dare put down the value of a magnet. I want those magnets. I want them very much. But I think the fact that they are cutting off park hopping, and the fact that and from what I know, the Disneyland pass, the Disneyland pass includes the Max Pass. And so these are things that are no longer available to us, and yet we're going to be paying the same price for the pass. That seems
the Disneyland
wrong.
Pass doesn't include Max Pass.
Depends on which pass you have. Like the pass that I have includes Max Pass. So, I mean, and again, why I'm on the East Coast and have a Disneyland annual pass, don't ask that question. But that was one of the things
that made me. It was always a paid add-on, though.
Well, I upgraded to that level that included Max Pass.
I think it's like a $75 or $100 upgrade, basically.
For the pass itself, yeah. But that was like the no blackouts and you get Max Pass. It was included. It wasn't like the park hopper option on a ticket. It was just like that level of ticket. Got it. But even so, park hopping itself just is one of those things that we get as a perk for having an annual pass, and that's not going to be there. So are they gonna credit us the difference because we can't park hop now?
Yeah, the question is absolutely, does this extra month make up for all of these things that we're losing as pass holders? I think Disney's hoping, well, we'll throw in an extra month and they'll stop complaining, but I don't know that that's the case.
What were you saying, Rich?
Yeah, a month is the right direction, but, and this goes back to, and some of our legal team was bantering back and forth on our Slack, and what does it really contractually obligate the owner of the pass and the user of the pass and the issuer of the pass? What's that relationship like? What are the factors within that relationship, and what are the obligations within that relationship? And it's unclear. Park hopping is definitely a perk of an annual pass. Go to the store in MK at the beginning and hop on Mine Train if you get there at Road Drop, and then head over to Epcot to do a little shopping and, I don't know, go on Soarin'. And, it's just how we do parks these days. We just kind of go from place to place.
It's kind of how we've been trained to do parks.
How we've been trained to, yeah, really. And we just... Without doing that again, back to our earlier point, seriously changes how we deal with the parks, how we approach them, and how we use them, so to speak. But in this case, talking about annual passes, we paid for with both a explicit declaration and certainly an implicit intention of all these perks that come along with getting that pass and the privileges, and one of those is park hopping. How much of that is worth, some percentage of the pass is never stated. It's an all or nothing thing. Clearly we're not getting 100% refund, but as soon as Disney starts saying, well, park hopping is roughly 36% of what you pay for a pass, then people like me will start whipping out their spreadsheets and saying, well, then if that's true, then this other perk must be worth this, and this other perk, and then we start nickel and diming, which of course, throwing it back at Disney, which they do very well, our annual passes. So again, back to my earlier comment, yes, I certainly hope, I really do expect that we have not heard the end of what they're going to do with annual passes. And one of the reasons is, what do we do about these perks, especially things that people pay big bucks for on their 10-day passes, like park hopping? What are we going to do about that? A month is like, here's a sympathy card, and that's about it. But no, it's not gonna work.
And then we talked about this too. The water parks, right? The water parks aren't opening with the parks. That's a dumb decision. I don't know why that's the case. Well, Universal and SeaWorld both open their water parks at the same time. Why Disney's not, I don't know. I was talking with Jill about this today. Like Disney is acting like they need all the capacity they can get. Well, water parks add a bunch of capacity, but they're just deciding not to open them. I think that's dumb. But in any case, if you have the annual pass that includes the water parks and they're not open, that has to get extended even more. So, who knows what's going to happen with all this. And maybe they're thinking a month is enough and these people will stop complaining. But knowing most annual pass holders, they're not going to stop complaining. A month is nowhere near enough to get them to stop complaining. A month isn't enough to get people to stop complaining about them running out of magnets. So how is a month going to be enough to get people to not complain about the lack of park hopping?
We have been well trained to complain, definitely.
Tell me, I need the magnets. This is not fun and games. I have to have that magnet. And
they're going to need to ship us like a box of magnets.
The other thing, though, is I think what the reason they can't open the water parks is they took every single water park employee and they're going to have them open Epcot since we don't have the cultural exchange program.
Yeah, no, I think it's a personnel issue for sure, and I think we're going to hear that the water parks are going to open at some point. It's going to be like a very sudden announcement and decision that they're going to open like in a couple days once they have the personnel available to do it. That's my prediction. So we'll see what happens. But speaking of Epcot, there's a big news coming out of Epcot when Epcot reopens on July 15th. But we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll come back and talk about the Epcot Food and Wine Festival, or whatever it's going to be turning out to be this year. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
4 panelists, 30 minutes, 1 week in Disney Parks news. This is Parks Center. From Parks Center, the panel and I cover the top 7 Disney Parks stories of the past week. From attraction news to transportation scandals to new food and merchandise, we'll cover it all in 30 minutes or less. You can watch us stream live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. at WDWintunes.com. Watch episodes on demand at youtube.com/WDWNT, or subscribe to the audio version of the show on your favorite podcast app.
Dreamfinders is WDW News Today's podcast all about the creative culture surrounding Disney parks. Authors, Imagineers, dancers, actors, photographers, filmmakers, and a whole lot more have all stopped by to chat about how Disney has inspired their artistic work.
But I still remember sitting in conference tables and looking across at Michael and Jeffrey Katzenberg and this sort of little 6-year-old inside of me going, what in heaven's name is going on here?
And we're off and running, and Tony needs someone to lay it out for him, and there's no architect available. So the next thing I know, I'm laying out the pavilion.
I gotta tell you, I have not enjoyed a podcast so much. It's just a warm conversation, and warm and intelligent conversation, which you don't find that often in podcasts.
Dreamfinders. Episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher.
WDW. News Tonight is our weekly comedy show combining the news of the week, comedy segments, thoughtful discussions, insane characters, parody commercials, games, and more. Watch live on Thursdays at 9 p.m. and become a Wigs member to get access to a bonus post show. Watch WDW News Tonight episodes anytime and live on YouTube, or get the audio-only version on iTunes and other podcast services.
You're muted, Jason.
Welcome back to Pressing Issues. We'll try that again. This week we're talking about all the Disney news of the park reservation system and the annual pass cancellations and things like that. If you missed all that, rewind to the beginning of the show and start watching from there. Right now, we're going to talk about the other big announcement that came out this week, the Epcot Food and Wine Festival that's starting on July 15th. The day the park reopens, they're already starting a festival. If anybody thought the Epcot Food and Wine Festival was crazy as it is, imagine starting it on the same day the park reopens. Who made that decision? I'll never know. But it's not quite the same as the normal Food and Wine Festival, because what we're getting is what Disney calls a taste of the Epcot Food and Wine Festival. And it looks like whatever that means, it looks like it means there's going to be less booths and less offerings. So obviously all the booths are still set up from Flower and Garden for the most part. And normally Flower and Garden has fewer booths than Food and Wine. So it looks like they're basically not adding any more. So we're going to get fewer booths than normal for Food and Wine. We're not getting the Eat to the Beat concerts. We're getting Mariachi Cobra at the America Gardens Theater instead. There's obviously no party for the senses or things like that. A lot of the seminars are cut. So it's definitely a stripped down version of the Food and Wine Festival. But it starts in July, of all things. Isn't that crazy? And so, whether this is, this is hard to figure out. Disney knows that food and wine is one of the big things that draws people to the parks. They've been doing their best, it seems, to make it inconvenient for people to get to the parks and make it so that people don't want to come quite yet. And then they announced Food and Wine is starting in July. So they're throwing out something that is going to be very attractive for people to come. Even though it's a stripped down version like everything else, all the parks are offering stripped down versions of things. No fireworks, no parades, no character meet and greets. And so here, instead of no Food and Wine, it's just a stripped down Food and Wine. So we'll see. I don't know. I guess the biggest question isn't how many booths there are, but are they going to have a magnet?
You know what? I heard that there were going to be 20 instead of the usual 35 booths, and I guess we'll have to wait and see if that's the case. But I think they're going to have to revamp the system that they have right now for when you order your food, because of the way the lines work, because of how many people you have to interact with. Maybe they move it to some sort of a mobile-only order, but then that's going to tax MDX even more so than it ever has. But I mean, I feel like they need to modify that system for getting the food. Maybe the lack of crowds will be easier because of people who aren't coming. But honestly, I'm not mad at this. Like, I'm excited that they've decided to do this, because we've seen how many things they've cut in general. The idea that there could still be some semblance of a festival, and it's almost necessary at Epcot anymore, because Remy won't be open yet. The front of the park is completely demolished. It's a war zone. Play won't be open yet. The Guardians won't be open yet. They took down, buildings to start building Journey of Water, which is not going to be open yet. So I think that they need stuff. And obviously you're not going to spend time, again, in like the Morocco Pavilion talking to Candy, who was working at Typhoon Lagoon, about Morocco's culture, because that's not going to be a thing that you have. So I think there are going to be a lot of differences, and I think they need this at Epcot to make it attractive for people to come, because without the festival and with all the construction and with all the attractions that are down and without the cultural exchange program, they got to have something. That's just my take on that.
And Epcot is certainly the park with the highest capacity, even with half of the Future World closed. So they need people to go to Epcot, and they need to make it attractive for people to go to Epcot. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a situation where, park reservations are all full except Epcot. And so people could go to Epcot 7 days in a row, but they can't go to any other park. And I don't think they want that. I think that's a bad look. So, yeah, this makes sense. Also, as I said, the booths are up. It doesn't make sense to take the booths down for what amounts to be like a month and then put them back up again for food and wine. Since they're already there, just leave them. The main reason there's not a festival over the summer is just the crowd levels over the summer. But with limited capacity, those crowd levels aren't going to be there. And so the booths taking up space along World Showcase Promenade is not an issue anymore. And so they don't have to take the booths down. And if the booths are up, why not start selling food? Because it makes them a heck of a lot of money. So I think this is, as much as it's absurd in our minds to have food and wine start in July, I think, as you said, this makes a lot of sense. There's really no downside to this. With the reduced crowds, you should have reduced lines at the booths, which is a good thing. I think for sure, I mean, the way that the booths operate nowadays is very different than it used to be. There never used to be a cast member at the food window looking at your ticket and then getting the food and handing it to you. That's a very recent addition to these festivals. In years past, you would just show the receipt to the person at the window and they'd give you your food. And I think, obviously, that was done to expedite the food delivery. And I think with reduced capacity, that probably won't be necessary. So, yeah, I could certainly see a lot of different things happening, but probably one main thing happening is one less person touching your food as it comes from the booth to you is going to be a good thing. And it seems like that cast member standing at the window facilitating things is probably going to be unnecessary. The other thing that, as you said, mobile order, I don't know if they're going to be able to have mobile order working in time on the app. That I doubt that's going to happen. But I can certainly see an instance where, they require all the transactions to be cashless. So you have to go buy a gift card in order to get food and wine food. They won't take cash at the booth. I could see that happening. That would make a lot of sense. I think there's options, but I also think that there's not going to be the crowds that we normally associate with food and wine, simply because the park capacity is going to be so reduced.
And yeah, also in thinking about logistics for a taste of a food and wine festival, on the outside of the booths, you got to think they have a different arrangement for ordering your food, paying for your food, getting your food. Whether that's a single line where you order, pay, and get at the same window, or two lines that you order, pay. Yeah, who knows what they'll come up with for that. But on the inside of those booths, space is very, very tight. And I can't imagine that there wouldn't have to be some changes to how the cast members themselves man the booths or person the booths, how the workers get your food. And I'm wondering, we were talking, I wonder if that will change the types of food and the variety. Again, less booze, less variety. Maybe that's partly why, of foods that we get. I mean, a bottle of wine and a bottle of beer is still going to be a bottle of wine and a bottle of beer, but some of the things that were created in previous food and wines were pretty intensive from a manual, construction, chef labor point of view. And I wonder if we'll tend to get more ready-made, heated up and then assembled layer one on top of layer two and then handed to you types of things, just to reduce the number of hands that touch it, like you already said, but also the interaction of the cast members inside the booth itself.
Yeah, either that's certainly one possibility, that we'll get simpler to assemble foods. But the other thing is, with a reduced capacity, you can probably get away with fewer cast members in the booth because there's no rush to make your food. I think there were certainly booths where if there were 3 items on the menu, there were 3 different people and each one specialized in one item and they just cranked them out. With such a reduced capacity, I could see all 3 items being assembled by one person, and it will slow things down, but things are going to be slowed down anyway. So, yeah, it may be the case that they're simpler items, but there also may be the case where each booth is just run by one person.
I just still go back to the idea that, I just still go back to the idea, though, that I wasn't expecting this. So the fact that they're actually doing it is great. So I think that whatever they come to the table with, even if it's this huge menu board and all it just says is sandwich, I mean, it's still more than I thought was going to be there to start with. So, and you know what,
it's an Uncrustable, and you just paid $8 for an Uncrustable.
Yeah. Gladly paid $8 for an Uncrustable at the same time, as long as I have a magnet in my hand.
It'll be Rich, the taste of Epcot handwich.
Right. Shame on me, though, for not thinking of the people in the booth, though, because that is a great point, that those are very small spaces. And, you get the people inside the booth, and even the people who are at the registers. Those registers are not far from each other either, and they usually run 2 or sometimes 3, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
Social distancing is definitely a bigger issue on the cast member side than I had even taken into account at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, like, I don't know. In Pennsylvania, restaurants haven't really reopened yet. But in Florida, restaurants have been reopened for a couple of weeks now. And I wonder how the kitchens are set up and whether there's more social distancing going on in restaurant kitchens now than there was in the past. And if that, is going to translate over to the booths at Epcot, because they're basically a mini kitchen. But I kind of have to think if restaurants are open and they're at a relatively high capacity, their kitchens have to be run in the same way they did in the past, which means very little distancing possible in those kitchens just because of how they're set up to run. So I don't know. Yeah. It'll be interesting. We'll see.
It will be interesting, yeah.
Can I just say I'm excited about the Spaceship Earth? Sorry, did you want to keep talking about the food?
No.
Oh, okay. So I'm just excited about
Spaceship Earth
because from the beginning, the Spaceship Earth was like, is it going to be open or is it not going to be open when the parks open up again? And I think, speaking of things I wasn't expecting to happen, I was expecting that to not reopen. And so, I mean, I'm sure it's a financial decision that's one more CapEx project they can put on hold because it hasn't been torn down. It makes sense for that. But to me, it's more of the whole people eater thing of it, that already that area in Epcot, when you walk in, is going to have a lot of construction stuff still that they're not going to be able to help. And then to think that there's less room to walk in the park on top of less attractions to be there. I'm just really excited that Spaceship Earth is going to be open when they come back. And even if it's on pause right now, that's fine. But that's exciting to me.
Like we said, food and wine is going to draw people to Epcot that otherwise may not go in the middle of July. And I think Spaceship Earth being open is going to draw a bunch of Epcot fanboys to Epcot who otherwise would have no reason to go in the middle of July. So although I don't think the Spaceship Earth effect is going to be as big as food and wine, it certainly is going to make me happy. It makes you happy. It makes a number of people happy that we're going to be able to ride Spaceship Earth again, when for a long time we were very, very concerned that it was not going to happen, that we would never get in another ride on this version of Spaceship Earth.
Hey, Kevin, did you check out that super chat? Because I think it's very vital that we make sure Jason knows about that. Did you see it, Jason?
Yeah, we did have a $9.99 from Stephen Brown for Aloe for Jason.
For Aloe. Yeah, I'm not
Jason,
watching the chat right now.
Your mom left you out in the sun too long.
So the first day I went to Volcano Bay, I forgot my hat. That turned out to be a serious issue. But I didn't get burnt too bad. And I'm kind of a lucky person in the sun that, it looks red for a couple days and then it sort of turns to tan, and I don't have really any issues. So I don't usually worry about it too much. But yeah, I was definitely red on, Wednesday was the first day that we went. I was definitely red on like Wednesday afternoon from being in Volcano Bay for 4 hours, I think, that day. So yeah, no, thank you for the aloe. It doesn't hurt. I mean, it's not burned as bad as it looks, for sure. But yeah, I need to remember my hat. That's the one thing I'm like, don't. I forgot. But anyway.
So sorry for the
thank you for the super chat. No,
Hey,
good. We got to point those out. Very good.
One thing I was just thinking of as we were talking about food and wine is the Epcot After 4 pass and how that might be relating partially to the times on the reservations. I wonder if there's some intent with that time slot to also differentiate for those folks to let them know, hey, your reservation isn't until 4 or maybe not even until 5, if volumes are high. But
That's
I also wonder
point.
I also wonder if that could potentially, as they get data, could become sort of a pseudo park hopping to say, all right, you're not going to be able to get in the morning, but we'll have this second set of later in the day reservations. And Epcot's kind of a prime candidate, but it could work at all the parks to say, okay, well, you as a pass holder, you've got your 3 that you get off the bat, but we'll let you make a 5 o'clock reservation at another park. And that's not going to take away from your 3, but you can only have one of those at once. You can make it on short notice. Maybe they only open up, on short notice, but once they start to have data, there could be other uses for that time slot to sort of reintroduce park hopping, but just not in the free sense of what it is. Could still be reservations, but a different type of reservation within the same system.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I don't know how many Epcot After 4 pass holders there actually are. To me, that seems like, well, you'd have to be a local to do that. But if you're a local, wouldn't you just want to have a real pass? I don't know. So I don't know how popular that pass is.
I don't think there's probably a bunch of them. I think it's more that other scenario where that could be useful just for normal pass holders to get more people into Epcot at the times they would normally want to go. And possibly because as an addition on top of those other, because they need people in there spending money. It doesn't work unless you max out your capacity, low as it may be. You need pass holders in there spending money who may not be, or definitely aren't always the same ones that want to rope drop that park and ride Frozen and Figment and
for sure
and go on Nemo. That park especially has 2 very different target audiences. So I think we could see fairly quickly some kind of add-on reservation like that doesn't take away from your full day ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point you brought up. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I mean, I was just going to say, I noticed that people were talking in the chat earlier about the reservation system and how long would it last. We have an article on the site from June 16th that said that the reservations are reportedly going to be through 2021 and specifically June of 2021. Kevin, you're already talking about will they lax off like the park hopper thing? Do you think that maybe there's a possibility that they get into this and they drop the reservation system, or do you think they're going to stick to the reservation system as long as they've said, which is June 2021?
I think it's going to stick around a long time, but I think that 3 cap is going to start to rise relatively quickly because until they get back to normal capacity, I think that's going to be an issue that they need to not only manage, but I think maybe more importantly in their minds, demonstrate that they're managing, from a liability standpoint, and stopping, crowding, because they still need to space out those people getting in the parks. But I could absolutely see after the first, 2, 3, 4 weeks that suddenly that AP cap of 3 days goes to 4 to 5, and so on. But with the reservation system staying for the foreseeable future, and they may fully intend to keep it through 2021 in September, and it may even go past that because of the 50th. It might actually be logical to keep it for the 50th to try to balance loads and manage expectations.
I think it also depends on when the reduced capacity mandates are relaxed. because that's a big thing too.
Yeah, and my thought is it doesn't hurt to have it if your capacity is such that everybody gets a reservation. Well, it's one other step, right. But Disney's never really hesitated to make us jump through hoops. So there's no real harm in having it and not needing it, which is why I could see and they may be thinking ahead too. What if there's another blow up and capacities get cut again? I mean, there's a lot of scenarios that could require that being needed.
And I think the scenario of let's have it and let's use it even though we don't really need it is actually a gold mine for them, because they get people to commit to which park they're going to on which day ahead of time. And that's data that they can use to, work with park hours and things like that, that they didn't necessarily have before. And so I think getting people to get accustomed to using it and then they're going to keep using it even if they didn't need to is maybe what we're going to see for the next year or year and a half, just because it's beneficial for Disney to know these things in advance.
Yeah, they can really start to manage staffing more precisely, and especially in a cost cutting mode, that makes a difference. So we already reserve everything else. So what the hell's reserving the park to?
I mean, especially if fast passes come back, you've got 3 fast passes at a park. Well, it's kind of no big deal to just reserve the park and then get the 3 fast passes for it. It's kind of all in the same general idea then at that point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just think about and especially like you were talking about, you were at Universal and you've got 2 days and you get to park hop back and forth. I assume that the hardest thing to get these days is still a Hagrid's reservation. Park hopping allows you, if you have a 4:00 reservation for Hagrid's, to go explore down into studios, and come back. And so if we don't have that opportunity, but we're still doing like Rise, is if that's still a situation where they're doing the virtual queue, if that ends up happening when they come back.
They're not.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that then would mean that you really kind of were stuck there and you couldn't do anything else. And even, even though they've got Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, there's still a lot of stuff that's just kind of, okay to spend your time on. And once you've done those, if you have a Rise for 7:00 at night, that kind of stinks.
Yeah, no, they said they're not doing virtual queues or fast passes for anything.
Sorry. And maybe there's maybe the idea that we floated previously about the reason that there are time slots in the reservation system is that eventually, as things change, hopefully for the better, you'll have a morning reservation at Magic Kingdom and an afternoon reservation at Epcot. I mean, it's not park hopping like we do today, but it fulfills Disney's need to know who's going to be where so they can control capacity, but still sort of kind of lets you do a little park hopping. I mean, there's lots of different scenarios that if it's within the system's capability, then they could certainly turn things on and off to manage us as we visit Disney.
Yep.
Well, and we start talking too about Genie. But who knows what Genie's going to do for us with park reservations too. They would love to funnel us into that thing, I'm sure. And if there's now potentially a tangible benefit to have your park reservations taken care of or have a leg up with that, I mean, that's the big thing that I see happening with all this is Disney's really getting an opportunity to reel a lot of things in, like cutting off third-party ticket resellers, for the foreseeable future. But could they push that, and where people now are very highly obligated to get a room and ticket package versus doing things separately, which kind of goes back to the tickets. They may be seeing this as an opportunity to really keep a lot of things in-house, which is both good for data and good for money.
Maybe, and now that we bring that up, sorry, just a quick comment. Maybe it's no coincidence that APs are limited to 3 reservations and Disney wants to promote a Genie as a way to manage us.
Oh, I get it.
That's three wishes, 3 reservations. Yeah, okay. When you have to explain something, it falls. Never mind.
Yeah, there could be a function where Genie says, "Hey, a reservation just opened up at, Park X," and without Genie, you don't know it, and you can't get it. There's going to be things going on.
Yes, Master, I will grant you an additional reservation today. I mean, I can totally see that within something they'd try.
But Jason, you sound like there's no incentive for them to ever get rid of the reservation system once they've gotten it in place. Is that? I mean, do you think it's a mistake?
There's not. Other than people not knowing how to use it and getting annoyed, there's not. Just like there's no incentive for Universal to get rid of the virtual queue for Hagrid now that they've got it. I'll talk about that in a second. What I wanted to say was to connect something that Kevin said and something that Rich said about Epcot and the After 4. The restaurants in World Showcase at Epcot have a huge capacity. And if the people that are going to Epcot on a given day aren't planning to stay till dinner or aren't planning to eat table service, then Disney really needs to get more people in Epcot after 4 o'clock to fill those restaurants, at least to whatever capacity they can, to generate as much income as they have from dining. And so I think, as we sort of all said, park hopping to Epcot after 4 may be the first instance of any kind of park hopping coming back, simply because they need to get people over there to put into those restaurants in World Showcase. And if you rope dropped Frozen Ever After, you may not want to stay at Epcot until dinner. And so they're going to need to fill that park in the evening to get to generate revenue from the restaurants. But getting back to the virtual queues at Universal and Hagrid's, I had more Hagrid virtual queue reservations than I could use this week. The first day we got there, we didn't get there till the middle of the afternoon on Tuesday, and we didn't get on Hagrid's. But Wednesday we knew what the system was. We were on Hagrid's Wednesday, Thursday. I had 3 different virtual reservations on Hagrid today. I only used one because I can't really ride that ride more than once in a row, or else I'll get ill. But Jill rode it twice in a row today, and we had a third one we ended up not using because we had lunch reservations. So with the capacity that's there now, we had more Hagrid reservations than we could physically use. So I think that's a good thing. But I think the other thing is that Universal has a virtual queue for the Mummy attraction. And Mummy has never, to me, been a super popular attraction. I don't think they need virtual queue for Mummy, especially not in this scenario where the park capacity is so reduced. Like, Mummy'd be a walk-on with the park capacities that we're seeing. I mean, Forbidden Journey is a walk-on a lot of the time. So Mummy is certainly going to be a walk-on a lot of the time. But they have virtual queue in place for Mummy, and they force everyone to use it. And I think that's just them training people to use virtual queue. I think it's just getting people accustomed to doing it, because then they'll roll it out to more attractions. And so I see the same thing happening with Disney with park reservations, is that requiring it even when it's not necessary is just going to train more people on how to do it. Just like FastPass, where, training people how to use FastPass, and most people get the FastPass thing now and they understand it. And then the virtual queue for Rise is the next iteration of that, where if you don't have essentially a FastPass for Rise, you can't ride at all. There's no standby. And that's the way the virtual queue works at Universal for Hagrid's and for Mummy. And they're just basically getting people accustomed to that so they can roll it out to more attractions.
I think there still needs to be standby again, just because eventually when the people who aren't experts on parks come back, if you walked into Disney World and you didn't know you needed, like, you know, your little kids with you and you're going to ride Peter Pan and you didn't realize that you had to have a reservation for it and they're all gone, that's devastating. I feel like there needs to be that option for standby at some point still.
Well,
do you disagree?
I mean, so that absolutely happened at Hagrid's, and it absolutely happened at the Mummy. And so for Hagrid's, the virtual queues, they put more into the system every 10 or 15 minutes. And for the Mummy, you can pretty much get one instantaneously. And so what I think happens is that for the Mummy, they say you need a virtual queue to ride it, and they say I don't have one, and then they show you how to do it, and boom, there's one available that lets you in 3 minutes, and you get it, and it's really just a formality, but what it does is it trains you how to use it. And so certainly for things like Pan, and same for Hagrid's, if they release more times over the course of the day in dribs and drabs, you're still going to be able to get it. It's not going to be like Rise where they're gone in 30 seconds. It's going to be they release some more over the course of the day, and you check in on the app every once in a while, and eventually you get one. So in that regard, Universal's doing a much better job than Disney in terms of the virtual queue, because more keep becoming available throughout the day as they sort of manage capacity and then they can react in real time. So, for example, one time yesterday, the line for Hagrid's, and this is virtual queue only, so all these people have virtual queue return times. The line for Hagrid's was all the way down to Poseidon's Fury, and that's a long line outside of the land that it's in. And so, but what that means is that they can, in real time, essentially tweak the number of virtual slots open that are going to be released at the next open, and at the next whatever quarter hour mark. They can reduce it by 10 or 15 or 20% because they kind of overdid it in the last section, and they need the line to go down a bit. And we saw that happen. After an hour, that super lengthy virtual queue was gone. And so the idea of releasing times, virtual queue times over the course of the day, not only lets them take into account downtime issues, but it also lets them tweak the amount of people that are able to ride in real time to manage the queue and make sure that the queue fits within the physical space that it's allotted for. So I think there's a lot of good things that Universal is doing with that that were not happening with Rise, with the times that ran out almost instantaneously in the morning.
Can I ask just a technical question about it? When you were getting your reservation for Hagrid's, can you get one standing in Universal Studios Park for Hagrid's, or do you have to be in Island?
You can get one in the parking garage. I got one in the parking garage.
Before you had,
so obviously there's. Go ahead. What?
I just said before you even checked in, like before you even like tapped in at the gate, you were able to get one in the parking garage.
It's not tied to your ticket. It's not tied to your ticket.
Just location.
You just have to be on Universal property. So you could as long as you're on Universal property, that's where the geofence is. It's not tied to your ticket. So obviously, if there's no point in you getting a return time if you don't have a ticket to get in the park, they kind of figure. And because park hopping is so easy, doesn't matter what park you're in. And even if you're in the parking garage, it doesn't matter. We were in the parking garage and it was like 8:45. And even though they're not supposed to open till 9, they happened to be on there at 8:45 today. So we got one. And we're in the parking garage. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter. And it also lets you get one for more than one person. So you could get 3, 4, 5 virtual queue spots depending on how big your party is. You just tell them what you want. It doesn't matter. And so, like for me today, I was trying to get 4, and I moved the little slider over to 5 by accident. but instead of wasting time trying to move it back, I just hit submit and got it for 5 because it really doesn't matter. If the line goes down too much, they'll just release more times at the next 15-minute mark to fill up. If my party of 5 turns out to be a party of 2, which is what happened. They're able to compensate for that in real time and accommodate that within like 15 minutes after it happens. They'll open up more slots. So yeah, you could literally be sitting in your hotel, probably at like Hard Rock Hotel or whatever, and get a return time for Hagrid's for later that day.
That's awesome. By the way, now see, I'm going to get in trouble because I think it's Marklin because is that how you pronounce your name? Put in a $5 super chat. Thanks for Rob's T-shirt and hat. So no, thank you. That's awesome. Thanks. And then also there's another one from Stephen Brown. I want Tom to fight for my annual pass like he fights for edible food at Tony's and a tail for Brer Bear. So thank you for that one as well. Sorry.
Thanks everybody for the super chats. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. I kind of have a bias towards ending the show on the early side because I have to be at Polynesian at 6 in the morning. So I'm going to ask our panelists if there's anything else that they want to talk about as we wrap this thing up. But I think we got through pretty much all of our agenda today anyway, and I interspersed my Universal experiences in there here and there, so that was good. But anything else panelists want to mention?
Rich?
No, I think we covered it. There's so much uncertainty. I think this is going to be, I think we all agree it will be an evolving situation. So stay tuned.
Yeah, yep. My thing is that, again, I think that they are overcompensating. I hope that's the case. And I hope that when I wake up in the morning and see, the WDWNT chat, that it is like, oh my gosh, what a great experience. I can't believe how easy it was to make my reservation. I don't think that's going to happen, but it would be fun if that was the case. That's the part that I'm a little bit anxious about. But overall, I'm just excited to get back to the parks, back to some bit of normal and a little bit of escape from everything that's been happening in the world. So I'm really looking forward to the parks opening back up, and I hope that the system works. And for any of you who are out there trying to get your reservations again, may the odds be ever in your favor.
Just because nobody's seen a unicorn doesn't mean they do not exist.
Fair.
I saw one today. The end of Hagrid's.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
God. Why do you have to keep humble bragging about how much fun you're having, Jason?
You know there's unicorns in Hagrid's. It's a thing. It's not a spoiler. Anyway, you'll see one soon enough, Rob. No, I think I do think that some of this system is over-engineered, and it's more than necessary. I wish the Disney servers were as over-engineered as the system they're trying to run here, so that they'll work tomorrow morning. I don't see that happening, but I do see reservations not being as difficult to procure as we all fear. Time will tell. We'll find out in a couple hours. So everybody get a good night's sleep and set your alarm clocks for like 6:30 or whatever, and then start refreshing maddeningly until the system lets you book something. And we'll see what happens. I'm sure it'll be all over Twitter tomorrow. All right. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to Rich and Rob for being on the show. Thank you to Kevin for not only running the show, but being on tonight as a panelist. Thanks to the audience. Thanks to everybody who gave us super chats. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there that are watching. Yeah, we'll be back next week. And I'll tell you all about how the Polynesian was on the first day it reopened. So that'll be fun. But again, stay tuned to WDWNT tomorrow, especially, and the rest of this week for news about the resorts reopening, and then tune in next Sunday night for another episode of Pressing Issues. Thanks, and good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
See ya.